do you have any charts, or is there a way we could calculate what is the actual true total supply, risk adjusted, for all the supply we know is off the market? What the OA has, if we assume they're never going to sell on the market, we take all that supply away. Do we have a number of some sort that can show what the what the actual supply is that that could be traded, and it maybe is staked too? Is there an accurate way of looking at that?
Yeah. Yes, and no. So I would probably say one of the best places that you can go is over here to Hex Daily Stats, right? Let's see if I can get this then up. So if I go over to Hex Daily Stats, I do have, we do have a pretty good handle, right, on what the actual numbers are for, for total supply, how much minted inflation is coming out, circulating supply, stake supply, etc. Right. I did have a request, and I worked on with somebody today to come up with what is the total supply, in terms of what's being paid out versus yield, and what that looks like. And we were looking at excluding the OA, but I kind of think at this point we should treat the OA not as quote unquote the OA, but just another user. In most cases, maybe you can do both, but
Well, or even have a list of users that coins haven't moved, therefore we could say they probably will not
yeah,
move. And then it'd be nice to just have like, okay, total supply of Hex, like the total number that's out there today, and then minus these 10 different actors in the ecosystem that are whales of some sort, where the coins haven't moved, and we minus all that from the supply. Something like that is what I was thinking.
yeah, I'm with you. I'm thinking out loud in my head too, and verbally about that. Um, you know, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's almost, I mean, I'm just thinking more about, you're saying by wallet and I'm saying by class, you know? And so I'm thinking about it like maybe you have a group A, which is the group of addresses that have this kind of like profile, and you don't count those.
Mm,
That's all. It's very semantical or semantics type of thing. So
that
sorry
makes
I
sense.
went off on that. Because I'm trying to get away from in my head. I'm trying to get away from trying to always allocate it to OA, because I really don't know what the OA addresses are. What we have is a list of addresses some people put together and said are OA related, right? So at some point, don't we lose track? Because nobody's updating that any longer, right? So at some point, don't we lose track of what's related, what's not related? Can we miss something? Almost feels like it'd be a better risk, approach to not worry, not try to do that, but rather just um, use the actual activity of the wallets as the basis for what you think they're going to do.
Well, you made me think of another way too. Is, is there a way to see? Maybe we could track it by the activity of the active wallets.
Mm,
So we get a list of all the wallets where coins have moved in the last, uh, I don't know, 2 years, or maybe close to the hex start date, or some number. Get a list of all of those wallets, and then add up all the hex that they have, all the stakes, all the stuff like that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then maybe even minus, I guess, so that's one part of it. Do it by the active ones, and then what do we do with all the stakes that are out 15 years? Do we minus those from the supply because they're so far away? Do we do it the supply for the next 5 years, 10 years?
Right, right. Yeah, there's definitely a couple different ways you can look at it. Depending what you're trying to get to. To answer some of your questions, you have this panel up now to go play around with if somebody wants to do it. And I called it the I called it the experimental token holder data.
Hmm.
And you can go into this. And so let's say I want to know, I want to see everybody has more than 1 billion HEX, let's say, currently in their wallet. Let's see, did I get 1 billion in there, right? Okay, so we only have 3 addresses with more than 1 billion HEX, according to the last bit of data that I had. And so now I can go look at those and say, well, when did they first enter into HEX? This is 21, 22, 20. And when was the last time they did any type of transaction involving HEX? And that was 22, 22, 22. So now this kind of goes to your point about trying to do some sort of analysis. Like, what's going on with these wallets? Who are these people? Are these swing traders? What is this address? It received 100 billion HEX. Well, who is that? Is that from the PulseX sacrifice? The PulseX? I really don't know. I haven't looked at them. But you can come in here and do that type of thing, right? So if you wanted to go look at whale addresses, you could do that. And look at 100 million to 1 billion. So these are all the addresses with a token balance of between 100 million and 1 billion. So there's 652 of those. So you can kind of go through that whole list. A lot of these probably are daughter addresses. But what it starts allowing you to do is to look at these ranges and, show me, things that haven't interacted since the beginning of HEX.
Yeah, there's just so many ways to classify, like you said, the classes. I like that idea. Do you count up all the 10 to 15 year stakes, and do you do it by cycles? I'm looking at the total supply of HEX for the next 5 years. This can be way different than the total supply for the next 15 years, for example. Just
Well, right. Well, and that other screen we were looking at for just a moment, I don't think we actually talked about it. We get in the supply. So when we look at these dates going into the future, what it's doing is it's calculating. It's assuming all these stakes will end in the future, and when they end, what will the payouts be, both yield and principal, and how does that change the total supply? Because the total supply goes up a little bit when that happens, right? As those come out, and the percentage change, other than we know that this big 29 to 30 is going to be a big period of time because it's like the 10-year anniversary of launch. On average, it's less than 2% per year in terms of increase in circulating HEX and in supply, because you just don't realize it all because so much of it's pushed into the future.
right. Yeah, are there any other places? I know we probably have some new ideas for charts and stuff now too, but is there anyone? I mean, is it just a matter of getting the data to, like you said, that there's not a lot of people tracking and having up to date data on the different big wells that at least is publicly available to even model some of this stuff. But is there any other way to know? To get an accurate supply of, I want to make these plans, I want to make these stakes, I want to, form this investment thesis around a total supply in this time frame. Anything else that would be helpful for that?
I think this chart that I pulled up is helpful in that way, because what you'd be able to do is to look for when we think, I think we covered this last time we spoke, but when do we think share, the amount of HEX coming out will be the lowest? That might be a good time to be ending a stake, and your stake in a month that has a very low amount of HEX coming out. That because then you aren't competing for the same eyeballs at the same time. You know, maybe you use things like the share rate increases to plan when you're going to start a stake and when you're going to end a stake. So if you're doing kind of native staking and you're doing a ladder, you probably, you know, within the range of when you're going to start something, you probably want to start a stake sooner than later. You have the ability to make changes to when you're going to do it, like do it before a big change. Like we have a 500 increase coming in February, right? So and cost a t-shirt or something like 500 or 600. So do you make the stake the day before or the day after? Well, if you could make the change, you know, do it before, then do it before, right? And then if you were staking today for short term and you know you're going to skim your interest or yield, and then you're going to restake, well, you probably want to come out a couple days before that so that you can restake at the lower rate. I mean, those types of things, you know, and kind of pick and choose when you're going to be um, pick and choose when you're going to be bringing data in and out, you know.